You're listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast, discussing all aspects of precision and long-range rifle shooting. This episode is brought to you by Impact Dynamics, advanced training for the precision shooter. And now, over to your hosts.
Hello and welcome to the Precision Shooting Podcast. My name is Rusty. This is episode number 85. And joining me tonight is Andrew, as regularly is.
Yeah, I'm here.
I was going to say as always, but it's not always.
Most of the time, yeah.
Quite often. Yeah, absolutely. And also joining us, who is quite often here, actually not, but fairly regularly, Bronte. How you doing?
Good, Rusty, and yourself?
Good, mate. Thanks for coming in on the last-minute call-up. Badgo had to fly out. One of his companies was something was happening. New takeover bid or something.
To count some money or something, yeah.
Yeah, I think go get some money off Remington or something along those lines. I'm not sure. Not sure the full story, but anyway, he had to leave the country quickly. Actually, now that I think of it, then, that seems way more suspicious than I'd thought at the time.
You're probably thinking too deeply into it. It's just
He might be some left-hander mission. Anyway, all right, good. So, gents, you've been well?
Yeah, not too bad.
Andrew, you got anything new happen for you recently?
Nah, nothing.
Any new
Just
acquisitions?
having a week off work. My family increased by a member, so yeah.
Oh, you got a dog?
I wish. Be a lot cheaper.
Congratulations, Andrew. I remember you dropped the news to me and Greg on the air, so to speak.
Yeah,
if you remember that. We
so
both went, whoa, hang on, what did you say? And it's happened, hasn't it?
It is, yeah. It happened yesterday. So another boy, which is, I guess if you're going to have 4 kids, probably boys are the way to go. You know, when they hit that 15, 16 year mark, you just sort of send them on their way. You don't have to worry a lot. But
no, yeah, it'll be 12.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, look, they've already owned. They don't own. I guess this is I'm going to put this out there. I purchased a firearm for each of my children when they're born. So
they
obviously
can use
when
it
they're
at appropriate time. Yeah.
Yes. So I was encouraged by the older ones to get that out of the safe and show the baby when he was only about an hour old. So.
Yeah, because you had the baby. Well, you helped with the baby at home. You delivered the baby. Of all things.
Yeah, I did. It wasn't by choice, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it. Hospitals are there for a reason.
Were you like on the phone or something to someone who knew what they're doing, or did you just like Google it and watch a YouTube video?
No, I just sort of grabbed it as it was coming out. Pretty much it. No, he decided to make an appearance before we had a chance to even get anybody to come over and look after the other ones while we went to hospital. So
yeah, right.
All good.
Covering all things long range and precision shooting. This podcast right here.
Yeah.
And child delivery.
Well, the way I'm intending it to go now is, like I said to Greg the other day, yesterday, whenever it was, I'm intending
before he left the country.
Yeah, it may have been while he was on a plane somewhere, but.
Okay.
Yeah, now I've got 4. I've got one to drive, one to open gates, one to run the light, and the other to load my magazines while I just sit in the back seat and shoot. So it should work out well.
You've got this well planned.
Yeah.
Well, you perhaps haven't considered all the years of training them to do all those things, and then by then you won't be able to sit in the back ute because you'll be old and it'll be too cold for you.
I'm in the back seat of the ute.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right.
They
yeah,
can
no, can't argue that.
Cold, yeah. So.
Good. Bronte, any children this week?
No, not me directly. My brother had a child, but
okay.
Yeah, similar sort of time frame, but no additions to the family, so to speak.
Smart man.
Yeah, I like disposable income.
What?
Yeah. So it's a funny thing. You may not have it for a little while.
What, for the next 20 or so years, probably. But yeah, other than that, it's all good.
Oh, good. Oh well, we were on the back of Ewa. Has just happened the other week, and there was some interesting product releases. I don't know if you guys have been up to date on some of them. Yeah,
followed a little bit. Yeah, there's a couple of things came up that were of interest. But,
what piqued your interest most, Andrew?
Well, March have come out with a new scope that they're calling the Genesis, which is.
I thought this would get mentioned.
Yeah, interesting. Did you check that out, Bronte?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a bit of like a love child between a high-end magnification scope and an Ivy mount, really, if you look at it.
Yeah. And I mean, effectively it was a 6-60, I believe.
First focal plane as well.
Yeah, with 400 MOA for internal adjustment.
Yeah, now that's the big selling point, isn't it? That internal adjustment of 400 MOA.
And combine that with 60 power on the top end, that would, I imagine, would have to catch the interest of the King of 2 Mile and that kind of crew.
Yeah, well, I believe that's what it's released for.
Yeah, I think you'll
Yeah.
find a few of those top guys, especially some of the Applied Ballistics crew, were involved in the production of it. Not necessarily
Probably more with the ideas, I would imagine. I would imagine that the engineers at Dion Optical would be the ones that actually made those ideas into reality. But it certainly seems like they've put together a package that would cover all the requirements of that kind of shooting. It's not going to be a cheap option though. I had a quick flick through Accurate Shooters Daily Bulletin, and they said there was a customer in North America somewhere that had placed the first pre-order at $5,000 US for the scope. Apparently optioned up, it would be maybe around the $6,000 US mark.
Yeah, it's a fair old investment, but it's one of those things. If that's the game you're in,
And you don't have 4 children.
You don't have 4 children, yeah, and the disposable income again.
Yeah. It's not the cheapest. It's not the prettiest scope either.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at a lot of those rifles.
I mean, I'm not saying it has to be. It's for what it is. It's going to be pushing some boundaries, but it's not a great looking scope.
But you look at a lot of those rifles that are used in that King of 2 Mile kind of thing, and they're not built to be cool or anything. They're built purely for a purpose.
Well, that's cool.
Well,
Yeah.
cool for the nerds.
Shut your
but
theory down.
Yeah, it's that whole function over form argument, really.
Oh,
for
yeah,
those.
no, absolutely.
It's one of those things that's quite interesting is the way they go about getting their 400 minutes of,
Oh, yeah, that's
MOA.
why we've got the engineer here to speak to us about it.
Yeah, there was one of the videos released, I think it had Stuart from BRT
yep.
involved in it. And it was quite interesting to see he actually, you knock the end of the objective lens and the whole sort of scope bounces out and then returns back. The actual whole inner assembly moves.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's quite a strange, and I mean, the intent behind that is to make sure it stays in its optical centre.
Yep.
Probably, I mean, yeah, without knowing the specifics of it, I mean, you look at what they did with the, I can't think of it now.
The US optics?
No.
Not thinking of that one.
No, that's sort of more of an external adjustment job. The Charlie Tarak.
Yep.
Using sort of a prism system rather than a conventional design, is it? Or is it not going down that path?
No, it's, I mean, obviously the inner workings of it would be proprietary information. It's probably, a lot
I
of
got a
time.
hacksaw.
Yeah, well, that too. But it's sort of...
Banco's got $5,000 easy.
Oh, we've got it sorted. Then we'll have a Chinese knockoff in weeks.
Just mill it in half. And
What could possibly go wrong?
Mill's better, yeah. No,
Yeah,
fair
it's a bit cleaner cut that way.
Yeah.
But it sort of looks like they've essentially still using the same principle of your rectitube moving up and down, but they've kind of got the whole scope body doing that, which is a bit different.
well, I guess it just allows you for that more movement. So
Well, yeah, absolutely. They're no longer bound by that constraint of your main tube diameter, which obviously is a typical limiting factor.
So they've got some recommended distances that this scope will take rounds to. Obviously, there's lots of variables with this, but this is some of the things that they suggest. It'll take a 22 LR rimfire to 1,000 yards. I assume this is based around a like 100-yard zero or something. Anyway, 2D4 out to 2,450 yards. 308 out to 2,950 yards. 338 lap to 4,000 yards. And a 416 Shaytac to 3 miles.
I wasn't aware that there was a 416 Shaytac. Well, I guess somebody's probably done it, but
Yep, correct. It was a Wildcat that was kind of in the guys that were involved in the production of the scope had been mucking around with. Yeah, because I sort of thought they may have made a typo as well with the Shaytac or Barrett sort of thing, but doing some research, it does exist apparently.
I would have thought the 375 would have been a longer range proposition.
Yeah, well,
Maybe.
that's right.
Has anyone seen the reticle on it?
No.
No.
No, not as yet.
That would be interesting to see, particularly with first focal plane 60 power.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The first focal plane, especially the early ones that come out, we really struggled a bit with that sort of being usable at the low power as well as the high power.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else released there that you guys checked out?
I haven't checked out, but I have seen a little bit of talk about a couple of new scopes from Kahles are coming out, which I think the first one was a 5 to 25
Yep.
And the other one, just I may not be correct on this, was possibly a 3 to
18, I think it
18?
was, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it was even on their website, Rusty. I was being talked about, but I don't think it was actually on their updated website yet. So
There you go. That's the K525i first focal plane. Right or left side windage, as they're known for, centre parallax. 5 illuminated reticles. That'll get busy in there.
yeah,
If you've got
it's
all 5.
somewhat disappointing they're catering for left-handers with the windage on the other side as an option. So
No, they're not necessarily for left-handers.
oh, good.
No, that's
Renewed a little bit of faith in them.
Yeah, you can just down to your preference.
Hmm.
Oh, hang on. No, I take it all back. In fact, shut the website down. We're off. Windage knobs can be ordered on left side for righties and on right side for southpaws.
That's the scope's
Wonder
not
if it
gonna
comes
sell.
with a drowning kit.
Well, you'd hope so, or a hanging bench, or some sort of torture device.
I mean, the good thing is that I don't imagine there'd be too many left-handers that wouldn't have a criminal record, so most of them probably wouldn't pass the background checks. So generally not something they have to worry about.
Or be employed to earn enough money to pay for it, because from the early reports, they're not going to be particularly cheap.
No.
There's the K318. Let's just make sure it doesn't have a southpaw option.
Oh, my bet is it does. No.
It's these damn minority groups again. Yeah, they only make 11%.
It is a nice looking scope, though. It's a short scope,
Yeah.
which is...
That's the feature about it.
yeah, I mean, that presumably there's a design specification somewhere for military contracts.
In my 15-second look at the webpage, I didn't see anything quickly about it, so therefore it doesn't exist. So there should be no left-hand option for that one, based entirely on my extensive research.
Yep.
On to the next product.
Reliable source of information we are.
There may be some more information about that. You can Google, or we'll put a link in the show notes to the 318K. Did I get the name right? Bloody ripper.
K318i, you're nearly there.
I had the... it was rubbish.
Anyway, moving right
That's
along.
the sort of thing a good podcast would edit out.
So it has a staying in there.
It's definitely staying in this one.
While I think of it, because I'll probably forget,
Yeah.
the new Vectronix Terrapin-X
Oh, yeah.
looks like could be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get onto Cashco to get a couple of those headed this way.
I think they're going to be sitting around the $3,500 or thereabouts.
They will sell a lot, I think.
But that's not too bad. Obviously,
that's
it's
good.
a lot of
That's-
money,
I
but
would have thought
you know,
that's really good.
there's definitely some improvements from the specifications that have been released so far on them over the original Terrapin. I think they're talking about 8 times optical zoom, which that's I think you've found with your Vectronix that you're limited by that zoom.
I mean,
partially.
admittedly, that is only 1 power more than the PLR of 10. The one I've got says 7 power.
But it's one better. It's like amps that go to 11.
True, but then I'll put a doubler, so I go to 14.
Yeah, but that's just greedy.
But they go to 11. It's one louder.
Okay, moving right along.
Yeah, but if you put a doubler on this, it would go to 16.
You put a tripler on it, which I tried.
And you wouldn't be able to
And
see
you
any
get
of the
such
reticle.
You get such a small field of view that the
It's useless.
readout of your range is actually out of your field of view, so you can't read it.
Yep.
I found that out the hard way. But no, the Terrapin-X, I think, for the guys that they don't want to stuff around having to make custom mounts and use doublers and 8 power. Yeah, it's probably would be nice if it was a 12 or something like that. But depending on the reticle they use in there, if it's something nice and fine, and obviously depending on the the beam divergence and the size of that beam, I guess would dictate how effective it is on small targets. Interesting when they say stated ranges of something. I haven't seen specifics about what they're ranging. Are they ranging a building or are they ranging a 6x8 steel plate hanging from chains at 2,000 meters?
Absolutely, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, it's one of those things that it's really a bit of a competing objectives when you start talking about magnification with rangefinders, because a lot of guys won't use it for ranging things at 2.5-3 kilometers. They'll range things at 300, 400, 600 meters.
Yeah.
So at 600 meters, having 12 times power would probably be a bit of a disadvantage because your field of view is going to go down.
For sure.
But then, if you're trying to range things at 2Ks,
Which, I mean, you think if a rangefinder's got the specs to do it and it's designed to do it, it kind of indicates that they're angling at that longer range market. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I mean, for probably all of us in the room would much rather it have that higher magnification because we'd be looking to use it at those extended ranges.
yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to see the first one here. I mean, I reckon if they can supply them in decent quantities, they will sell pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just Rusty had a look at the specs now. Does it have sort of Bluetooth conductivity and things like that? Yep.
Yeah,
well,
it does,
that's a winner right there
Yeah,
when you start talking about hooking up to your Kestrels and things
I
like
think
that.
you know to go with a relatively high end
But-
sort of common spec rangefinder, they have to do that really.
I don't know what it hooks in with. It just says here Ballistics powered by Kestrel and Applied Ballistics, and it says that there is an app for the rangefinder.
Whether it talks to your Kestrel,
Yeah, just
or,
I'm looking through.
yeah.
Yeah, well, if it's if
You
it's,
presume it would.
yeah, if it's communicating, it
If
may
they're-
not do it today, but in the
Well, if
in the
they're
time to
mentioning
make it work.
Kestrel specifically,
Absolutely.
I mean, surely it would be.
Ha ha
common
ha
sense.
ha ha. No, I got nothing. No,
No,
it's just
No,
making
just
random
excited.
noise.
Yep.
No, the wireless communication between the Terrapin-X mobile app, Kestrel ballistic solvers supporting Link protocol, or other products.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
So it sounds like it's probably running off like a Bluetooth low energy style arrangement, which will give us plenty of options, really.
Should do.
It's also a pretty sleek looking unit as well. Like it's a bit futuristic. It looks like you'd see on some sort of sci-fi.
Yeah, like a stealth.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing, yeah. So you put it down and lose it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what you're going to do with a $3,000 rangefinder.
Well, I've nearly lost mine once or twice, but I just looking at that, you had a picture up there, Rusty, of the reticle with like a circle. Did it have a crosshair in the middle of it, or is it just a circle?
I think it's a circle with gaps where a crosshair would be.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because I remember when we spoke to Nick Vitalbo, reference rangefinders, he sort of indicated that generally speaking, if you got a circle reticle, it's because that's
the beam.
roughly the beam size.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Which I haven't looked up the specs on the beam of that new Vectronix, but yeah, if it's on the larger side, it'd be interesting to see how usable it is for shooting purposes.
It's always one of those disappointing things when you read the specifications. It claims some astronomical range, but it achieves it by having a beam the size of a house.
Yeah, look, that's where
Good for ranging houses, though.
Yeah, but generally shooting at houses is frowned upon.
depends what
didn't-
what line of work you're in, really. But
Well, that's true. Absolutely, we do have to pay
No.
respect to our law enforcement and military guys.
I appreciate your comment, though. I just was proving a point. Fine, I'll move on.
yeah, shut up.
Righto, so the Terrapin, that looks good. You're right. Anything else you guys saw? I know Bushnell dropped an app in conjunction with Applied Ballistics, and I did ask you guys, had you used it before? And none of us had, so...
Yeah,
We'll talk at depth about that.
yeah. There was another one that Steiner, my probably favourite company, released, where they have a scope with a inbuilt ballistic
Yeah.
solver. And I think it does environmentals and the like as well. So it's sort of following. I think it was
Revic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they brought one out last year or the year before. So it's down that same sort of path. So by the looks of it, they've got a few different options. I think they had a 1 to 8 power, and then I think it was maybe 5 to 27.
Okay.
Power, which
Yeah,
was
right.
a bit weird, but
That's what they said about you as well, so...
yeah, well, they were
Feelings
right.
mutual. Yeah, no, I saw that briefly the other day, and there's another. They've got another one out or coming out that I think's like a 4 to 16 or something in that sort of vicinity. More of a PRS orientated one in the Steiners or Steiner, as you seem to say. Wow.
German heritage, mate.
There we go.
Nice.
Explains everything.
Most of the good scopes are made in Austria, though, aren't they?
No.
Well, let's move on from that one.
Yeah, but they all use shot glass, which is German.
Anyway, moving right along.
Cool. Well, there's always a plethora of products at those sort of events. No doubt we've missed a bunch. So if you've seen anything that's of interest to you, particularly after, well, I guess we had John's wrap up last episode about the shot shot show. So I don't think we'll do one on Ewa, but if there's enough interest in something, we'll find someone who was there. Actually, a few guys who were there. So yeah, if there's enough products there that were interesting, but it'd be good to find out about, particularly that March one. Would be really interesting to see, because that sort of product is one that sets a benchmark, and if it's embraced, they can go quite significantly from there. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it'd be good to get Stuart on the show. I think he was pretty heavily involved in the concept of it. I think the stories suggest it was born in a Las Vegas hotel room a few years ago.
Oh, many things are
sounds a bit questionable.
Many things are conceived in a Las Vegas hotel
that's
room.
right.
Very few of them are firearms related products.
Yeah, we don't talk about what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, eh?
So the other thing that has happened since our recording our last episode was the PRS has been announced. I know we dropped the date on the last one, but that was done a few weeks prior to actually doing it, and we were working out whether we release it or cut it out. Anyway, so PRS Australia has announced that, and we're sponsoring, by the way, Andrew. I don't know if you know that.
Cool.
We're sponsoring it, so there'll probably be some coffee mugs or Badco's wallet on the table as a prize.
So there better be some sort of like payoff it back to me then, I guess, for the sponsorship deal.
Not sure how that works.
Get to name some stages or something.
Well, okay. Well, we can jump right into the competition we're going to run. Yeah, good. That was really smooth. Well rehearsed. So we have a slight advantage where I'm going to be designing a lot of the stages for it, and so we've managed to swindle my arm to decide that one of them is going to be named by a listener. You guys have just jumped on your phones and just disinterested in this part of the show.
No, I wrote my name down.
Okay. Okay, good.
So did I.
I bet, Andrew. I bet it. So the idea will be that we're going to put a post up on Facebook and probably Instagram and other places, and we'll get you guys can name a stage. And this came about because often when I'm writing a stage up, I write a name up, and probably about 50% of the time I just go with a name and then develop a stage out of that. So we're going to do the same thing, but instead of me coming up with a name, which will probably be rubbish, I'm going to get you guys to come up with a name, and whoever makes the most interesting name that we actually end up using, making sure it's one we can actually use. I can take a guess at what Bronte's going to be.
You'd probably get it wrong.
Lie on my guts and shoot something really close.
No. No, we're not F-class shooters.
Ooh.
Shots have been fired.
Yeah, except they generally shoot longer range than this PRS match is going to be, mate. So that's not.
Yeah, it's a
it's
shame,
not significantly appropriate.
Yeah, but they take the whole day to fire the same amount of rounds as one stage in the PRS. So anyway,
good. So, that's not your stage name?
No.
Okay. All right. So, Bronte, what's your entry into the stage name competition? Oh, we'll probably put a coffee mug out for whoever does this one.
Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy. Kahles, Kansas is going bye-bye.
Okay.
There is actually something I've got in the back of my mind for that, but I'll explain that later.
Right. Buckle your seat, Dorothy, because Kansas is going
Seatbelt.
bye-bye. Seatbelt. Okay. Don't think they had them in Cyclones. Twisters. Or in balloons. They have seatbelts in balloons?
I'm not particularly familiar with the anatomy of balloons.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Go. Right.
You're not
Andrew,
gonna hit
do
me
you
up,
do you have a name?
No. I've had enough trouble thinking of names lately for things. I've only
I
come
thought
up
you'd
with
be on a roll.
Yeah, it's taken me 9 months to think of this one. No, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one.
All right.
Check.
All right. So we'll get your name on the next one. So, guys, we'll put that up on Facebook, and if you want to throw us some names, they can be stupid. Actually, probably the worse they are, the more chance they've got of getting in. If they inspire me for an idea that ends up becoming a stage, that will be the winner, and you'll get a coffee mug. We might try and get Bagco to sign it if he makes it back into the country by then. I don't know if he's actually moved overseas. Well, we'll find out, I guess.
Non-extradition country or something, possibly.
I think he bought a couple islands.
Yeah, islands.
Cayman.
He wouldn't limit himself to an island, mate.
Didn't say how big they were.
Yeah, okay. All right. All of America.
It's kind of an island.
In a way.
He bought Hawaii, I think.
It's just got that sort of, part between Alaska and the mainland United States.
Canada.
Some would argue is another state, but yeah.
Speaking of Canada, we got sent some books, actually. You can have a little look anyway, Bronte. Behind you there, mate, there's a stack of 3 books. Oh, we have got more PRS news, but that's deeply personal, so we'll get into that in a moment.
Oh.
Rodney Mays, I think we alluded to this, that he was sending these over. So he's written a book called Impact, good name, and it's about training and preparation for precision rifle matches. So, actually, Bronte, I'm going to leave that one with you. It's Greg's copy, but I'll leave it with you and Andrew, and we're going to have a little look through, and no doubt in a future episode we'll talk about it. And yeah, that would be good.
It's particularly relevant given the rapid rate that this PRS type shooting's taking off.
Well, this is I thought you were going to say the rapid rate this next event is coming up in, because that's going to be relevant to my next topic. But
so that's more of a you problem than a me problem. So
it's going to be, if this makes it to air, what I'm going to say in a moment, if that makes it to air, it's a big me problem. But anyway, we'll find out. But if you are looking for a little bit of help on this, I know that you can buy this on Amazon. So if you want it on like a Kindle or whatever you do with those sort of things, you can pick it up on Amazon, or you get the physical copy like we've got here. Might even speak to Rodney, see if we might be able to give one of these away. Excellent. So I have just returned from swanning around country Victoria. As you guys know, Andrew was very busy with his baby.
No, not really. I did not a lot. Kind of sitting around doing not much, actually.
Good. And between gun shows and meetings and bits and pieces, it's been a good time. But I ended up, I think, eating at the pub. I was away for 12 days. I think I ate at the pub probably about 15 times. Because, you arrive somewhere and, catch up with some guys like, oh, you want to go to the pub? And you go, sure, first day, of course, absolutely, let's do that. And then the second, and then by the time you get to the end, they go, oh, you want to go to the pub? And you go, well, I want to go hang out with this person. So, yeah, okay, good.
Schnitzel number 35.
Yeah, spot on. So, we've been packing on some pounds, and I have I'm going to throw this out there. We have about 6.5 weeks to the PRS. I am going to plan on dropping some weight. But, that's kind of, just doesn't really matter unless we make it interesting. So, if the listeners will put up with it, I thought we might do a little challenge on the way to the PRS. So, I currently weigh 128 kilos, and I need to bring that down. But I thought we could have 10 listeners, and if there's 10 listeners who are going to be at the PRS who get in touch and say they want to take this on, I will do my best to drop 10 kilos by the PRS. Okay.
6 weeks?
In 6.5 weeks. Yep.
All right.
So it's going to be a push, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so. We could, of course, maybe cut your leg or something off.
Yeah, I'm not limiting myself to how it could be done, but I'm thinking 10. And here's the deal. So the first 10 listeners who are going to be at the PRS who get in touch after hearing this podcast and are happy to take this on, if at the PRS I have not achieved my goal, I'll give them all a 6-pack each. But if I have achieved my goal, they will owe me a 6-pack. And that 6-pack will be shared amongst whoever.
I was about to say you'll undo that 6 weeks of good work.
I don't care.
So when does the weigh-in come? Does it before or after the 6-packs are exchanged?
Before. Because otherwise, how do we know which way to exchange them?
Well, I'm thinking that after all those 6-packs are consumed, you're going to be.
Oh, it's nothing to do with that. Yeah, it's nothing to do with that. But I'm putting on the line. I know 10 kilos is quite challenging. I weighed myself while you arrived tonight, Bronte, so 128. If I can get down to 118 by the PRS, then those 10 listeners who have nominated themselves who are going to be at the PRS all owe me a 6-pack of reasonable beer.
So nothing made in Victoria then.
Yep. And if I have if I've failed it, I'll buy each of them a 6-pack.
So basically what you're saying is you need 10 people that got no faith in you.
I don't think that's going to be a challenge to find. I just need 10 people who are listening who are also going to be at the PRS. That's probably more the clarification.
And if you only get one person, can the odds or the volume be the same? Like if you are successful, they have to buy you 10 6-packs?
We'll see what the response rate is.
Depends who it is, I guess.
I like the way you word it, though. They have to buy me 10 6-packs, not necessarily the other way around. No, I'm going to... Up to 10 people. Up to 10 people. If it's one, it's a 6-pack either way. If it's more, away we go. So, and if we've probably got a couple of episodes prior to the PRS, so we shall... Do I keep updated? Do I let these guys...
No.
No.
It's like putting in your footy tips for the the end of the season results. You got to just put it in and...
Okay, so just got to jump on board without knowing how I'm tracking.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, all right, cool. We won't do weigh-ins on the way in. That was well said, wasn't it? We won't do weigh-ins on the lead up, and we'll find out at the event. That'll be on the prize table. Cool.
Interesting. You did not pre-warn us about that.
I didn't prep you about that one.
No,
I thought Bronte might want to jump on board as a 6-pack.
I'm tempted.
He's lacking in faith in me. I can see it in his eyes. He's going, you got no chance, mate. Yeah, probably don't. But at the end of the day, we'll end up having lots of beers at some point, and I would have probably dropped a few kilos. So
you'd be better for it. So it's a win-win, really.
Yeah. So anyway, this is officially now known as the fat episode. So guys, it's Future Rusty here. And since recording this episode a couple of days ago, I still want to do this challenge. I'm not super confident with getting it, but at the end of it, if I do succeed, I don't need 10 6-packs of beer. So here's the change I'm going to make. If I do manage to complete the task of dropping 10 kilos by the PRS, rather than buy me a 6-pack of beer, I'm going to ask those 10 people who do decide to jump on board to make a donation to Soldier On. It's a wonderful organisation that helps veterans and other people that have been involved in law enforcement. It helps support them, particularly through tough times. Many of us who are listening know the astronomical suicide rate from veterans, and this is something that we do need to do something about. So there's only something little, but anything we can do, I guess, helps. So if I don't do it, I will happily buy the 10 people who register with me a 6-pack, or if you prefer, I can make a donation to Soldier On. And if I do manage to drop the 10, I'm going to ask those 10 people to donate to Soldier On. Drop us a message if you want to be one of the 10, if you are going to be at PRS and want a bit of a laugh about it. But by the same token, make sure you look up Soldier On. We'll link in the show notes, and they're well worthwhile checking into. Tonight's actual topic, now that we're like 2 hours in, is about an email we received from a listener. We've got one more piece of follow-up. We put out the call in the last group episode we did about people who listen to us from various places and bits and pieces.
Oh, yes.
And we got some people who got in touch with us. So, some interesting ones. I'm just going to do a couple because we're limited on time. Having said that, we spent like 15 minutes talking about childbirth and March scopes. Okay, so this is from Mike. Hey guys, I listen while at work out on a ranch in Montana. So I've listened horseback, in a tractor, irritating hay.
Irrigating, probably.
Well, no, he's irritating hay. I prefer to think of it as irritating hay. And I actually listened till just minutes before I shot my cow elk this year. So he's listening while he's hunting.
What you can say is we're a direct contributor to his hunting success.
You're welcome, Mike. But I shoot a 300 Win Mag with no brakes, so I ditched the headphones for Ear Pro. Probably
not a bad decision, really.
Yeah, just to upgrade his Ear Pro. Good show. I like that you don't have a bunch of dead air like some podcasts. But that's good, Mike. Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
All right. So I've got another one here from Casey. Hello, gentlemen.
Clearly doesn't know us very well.
Should we just leave it there?
Yeah, probably.
All right. Casey here in California. I listen while at work. I am the brake and clutch engineer for all forms of motorsport. I am a brake and clutch. I just thought he was the one in the world. Well done. I am a brake and clutch engineer for all forms of motorsport. I'm running the CAD program on my office computer, designing throttle, brake, and clutch pedal assemblies at the moment. Just getting started in the long-range target shooting world and trying to learn. Enjoying the podcasts and comedic banter. When do we do that?
I don't know, Rusty. Every time I've been on, it's always been serious.
Been serious and we
Maybe he edits it all out.
Oh, great.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, yep. No, fair enough.
No, sorry, I've woken up Siri for some reason while I'm trying to check my emails on my phone. Also enjoys the Australian sayings. Keep it up. Thanks, Casey. She'll be right, mate. Get it up, yeah.
Yeah. Rock on.
Yeah, we do have a few cracker sayings.
Rock on is one of them.
That's the first thing that came to mind.
Probably the best
But a
known.
lot of them would probably be not get past the censors anyway. So
All right. Speaking of listeners, this one came with a little bit more. So this is our topic for tonight. This is our actual topic. All right, this one's from Rich. From being ex-imperial colonialists like myself, how do you guys decide what units to use? It sounds like most of you guys are ranging in meters, but do winds in miles per hour, angles in mil. I've just lost the email. Let's grab it back. Angles in mil, velocity in feet per second, temperature in centigrade, and air pressure in pascals. He emotes that it's annoying. When it comes to ballistic calculators, they tend to want to make you all metric or all imperial. I'd love to go all metric because it's 2018. That's, I guess, a legitimate reason. Also, that's more sensible. But obviously, most of all the useful stuff in the US is imperial, especially wind and velocity. And it's a bit of a pain converting black and white units into colour. Okay. How do you guys deal with this? Any apps better than others for letting you choose units individually? Is it better just to commit to one or follow whatever mix your shooting mates do? Best from Richard. He's from New Zealand, but he works in Stockholm.
which would be metric, I would presume, a metric country, Sweden.
Oh, I believe so. I mean, they're
Yeah.
sensible. So
Would have thought it would be. I think pretty much America's about the last of the Mohicans in that respect.
I mean, England still uses pounds and
miles.
yeah,
Yeah, true.
and then they also use some metric. So
Hmm.
just while I'll sort of ask it straight up, I guess he asks, is there any particular programs that are better for entering individual units?
Yep.
You would be probably the most familiar with Applied Ballistics in this room. What's your thoughts on that program in that regard?
Applied Ballistics categorise a lot. So they don't make you work all in one or the other, but they do not allow you to select individually. They allow you to select like distance.
A field, yeah.
Yeah, or atmosphere or other or whatever. And so I've found that sometimes frustrating because for whatever reason, we have something that we want to run in meters per second, but in miles per hour, but we want to measure it in something else in millimeters, and they're in the same category, and that can be challenging. GeoBallistics is probably pretty good with that, where you can select pretty much everything. You can choose how it's going to be displayed on every option. So I find that as a really good option. And that's where, when the app allows you to do it like that, it works really, really well.
But I mean, look, my personal thoughts on it. I mean, I've been that crazy busy in the last couple of years. I haven't done a lot of sort of competitive shooting or long range shooting. But my thoughts are that my intention is to go down the metric line and make myself learn. I mean, I'm probably very much similar to what he said in his email. I range in meters.
Yep.
I use feet per second, and mils are my preferred adjustment on a scope. So it's sort of all over the place. I intend to go down the metric line of running sort of obviously your distance in meters, your wind speed in meters per second, and so on. So that I think it's just a matter of being familiar with that. You're used to going miles per hour in wind. Okay, 1 mile an hour is just many meters per second, and just familiarising yourself with that conversion.
Sure.
I guess it's me personally, but what's your thoughts?
I think it's stupid. Like, I think what we've ended up with, this collaboration of all sorts of measurements, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it is what we've got, and unfortunately many of us are familiar with what we've got and are less inclined to change that. So, I mean, kudos to you to make a decision to try and sort of align yourself one way or the other. I think that... Sorry?
Yeah, look, my sort of thoughts are, if you were going to introduce somebody to shooting, to the degree where they're going to have to consider all these options, and they've got no preconceived notion of anything, you'd be far better off to teach them in one, sort of using one unit of measure rather than just sort of all over the place. The same with scopes, like, do you go mix and match reticles, or, that we've discussed, scope, whether you go mil or MOA in the past, but I think if you're going from scratch, this is the way I've broken it down and rationalised it, is, all right, what makes the most sense here? The most sense would be to use one system and stick with that one system. And yes, it's going to take a while to break some of those sort of natural, when you're looking at a range, you go, on the wind, you might go, for me, I always make the call in miles per hour, which is stupid because we don't do anything else in this country in miles per hour. But it's just sort of become...
we have that saying, 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's one.
Do we?
Yeah, no, it's pretty universal.
How many times do you say, that's going 1,000 metres per second?
Yeah. But when a police officer pulls you over and goes, you were going 65 miles an hour, it's the whole, generally speaking, when you're using units of speed...
I'm not being overly serious, by the way.
Sorry,
you seem to be taking it a bit too seriously.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
But no, I think, obviously, from a logical perspective, you would operate in one system rather than having multiple, not just using sort of two different sort of measures, but just intermingling them, which is what seems to happen.
Bronte, you look like you want to talk, but I'm going to just mention something first. Actually, no, you can go. I'll see if it's still relevant after you.
What you're saying makes a lot of sense, Andrew, as far as sticking with one lot of units. But a lot of shooters learn things along the lines of the quick win formulas and things like that really work with that blended lot of units. And I mean, another point, if you talk about reading wind in meters per second, just a quick Google, you got roughly 1 meter a second is equal to about 2.2 miles per hour. So you've got a little bit coarser resolution on your value. So it's I guess it's always been done that way, essentially, with the miles per hour with the wind, and a lot of formulas have been generated around that. So it makes it pretty challenging for a new shooter, especially if they're learning from somebody else who's always done it that way, to pick it up.
No, we've always done it that way, so we'll can this podcast and jump into a radio station instead.
Done. Let's do it.
Yep, sounds like a plan.
More corporate sponsorship.
Then I have to drive somewhere. All right. So what I was going to say before is that I think part of the thing that lends itself to the fact that we utilise so many different systems, we utilise different systems and they mix and match them, is because whether I measure temperature in centigrade or Fahrenheit probably makes little difference to whether I arrange in meters or yards. And that's where I think we end up having this this choice of all these different measurements in various setups, because a lot of them, it's not super easy to relate them one to the other. Now, there is some that absolutely will relate and become easier if you do keep them together. But I think that's why we've got away with it for so long, is because we don't find ourselves needing to do it.
Well, I mean, I guess the reality is if you're using a system that might be, I guess, mixing and matching. It really doesn't matter as long as it's working for you.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with it. I mean, I've seen guys that are very, very quick with making a call on the wind, even making a call on judging the range, and then what their solution's going to be, and if it works for you and it's accurate for you, why would you bother changing? Really?
Oh, absolutely. It's similar sort of things as the MIL versus MOA debate. If it works for you, stick with it. Like, there's no point changing just because there's a new kid on the block.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this in previous podcasts. We'd get the question of what's better, MIL or MOA. It's a very subjective question.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, like, I'm just having a look through, and probably the only things that I use in the Imperial system would be wind in miles per hour and velocity in feet per second. All my atmospherics are all done in they're all done in metric, and to be honest, I just use density altitude majority of the time, plus temperature, and so that's in meters. And I guess the data's a number, so we just apply the particular number in whatever it is. So I think it would be. I can imagine getting into it now. Well, no, getting into it now, it can be quite confusing because you got this mixture of this and that, and you got to flick your various bits and pieces back and forth. I think if you are starting off, choosing to do everything in metric is no significant downside. The numbers are still what they are. You'll find a lot of the wind formulas and stuff all based around miles per hour. So but the patterns still exist. The data that's all drawn from is still the same, and still those patterns would exist in meters per second. It's about sort of working out what calculations will get you to the point you want them to. And no doubt there will be plenty of formulas out there for meters per second. I'm sure it's not a foreign concept. Just I haven't come across them so much, and they don't seem so prevalent.
I guess it would really come down to how simple the maths is. Some of those miles per hour meters formulas are really basic, simple maths.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's got to be, if you're going to be doing a solution that you got to come up with quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got to be able to be remembered. And,
or if I'm able to do it.
Sorry?
Or if I'm able to do it. It's got to be real simple.
You can't
or
take
left-handers.
Oh, let's not
let's
push
not
the
stretch
envelope
things.
there.
Yeah, come on,
Andrew.
guys.
1 + 1.
Yeah, they have to take their shoes off and socks off for that.
Then they can count to 12.
So, what I find amusing is we've probably offended left-handers more on this episode, and Badco wasn't even here for it. He's going to be so proud. All right, so the only other thing that perhaps is diminished, I think, with having this or utilising all metric or whatever is some of the communication can be challenging. Talking about velocity, feet per second, that sort of gear. Feet per second is such a common discussion point that if you go, I rock up and go, I shoot 850 meters per second, and people go, well, that's good. Cool, moving on. And it can be, on the fly, it can be challenging to do that. So perhaps we have to start a revolution or something.
So what you're basically advocating is you just fit in with whatever the rest of the sheep are doing.
Yeah, being right-handed.
Yeah.
Are you disagreeing?
Not at all.
Okay, didn't think so. So I'm not saying it's we have to go that way. That's one of the reasons it's probably has really, when things are pretty common stand, people sort of seem to run with them fairly comfortably. So
it'd be interesting to see, give it 20 years, whether we're in the same situation we're at now in that regard, or whether one has really...
hopefully you've got more comfortable chairs and better microphones, mate.
Yeah. That'd be good, but, tight ass management.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of better microphones and nicer chairs, we have a Patreon page. And we really appreciate our Patreon supporters because we are slowly upgrading some of our equipment. So thanks, Patreon. Just, I don't know why I thought that was an appropriate time to mention it, but I did.
Because you'd forgotten up till now?
Sure.
Yep.
So, do we cover all Rich's questions?
We sort of skirted around it.
Okay, here we go. So he'd love to go on metric, but a lot of this is useful stuff, wind velocity. as we said, I think velocity definitely is. You can switch over to meters per second. It will have very little effect in terms of what you do. You just set your chronograph on that, run the number, and away you go. The wind side of things, I think Jared from Victorian Precision Service Rifle Series, I know he runs meters per second and runs it very effectively and very comfortably. So it's not by any stretch would say it works.
I don't think it's
with it.
I don't think it's that critical. I don't think there's any make or break, because I mean I've seen plenty of guys, and myself included, will run feet per second for their velocities, run meters for their range, and run a mil scope and have no issues. And not having to sort of stop and think, oh, what does that equate to? You run the system and you don't think about it. So I guess if you're familiar with the system, why change it?
Yeah, but we're talking about someone who's perhaps not familiar with any, and he's deciding what terrible mixture he's going to put together in terms of concoction. Would you guys recommend he either go down the mill or the imperial path exclusively?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say go down either path exclusively.
No?
Because
bastardise some sort of system together so that he can
probably
talk the language.
I mean, if his sort of brain is already thinking along the lines of feet per second and yards or whatever it might be, then that would have to influence the the sort of the system you would use, I would imagine. But I mean, I think it would depend on what what sort of upbringing you've had. I mean, if you were to say go into a school these days here in Australia and start talking about feet per second or yards, they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about, because it's just not part of upbringing at all. So, but if you talk to somebody that went to school 30 or 40 years ago, they'd be familiar with probably both.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of depends on where you're getting your information from as well. If you're book learning or something to that effect, then choose your own adventure, really. But if you're talking and learning, off of somebody that's been doing it for a while or something like that, they're probably going to be communicating in feet per second for velocity and things along those lines. So it's where you're sourcing your information, who you're interfacing with. I mean, obviously, in the early days, probably mil wasn't that popular, so you'd sort of walk around and say, oh, well, it's, correction of half a mil. Everyone kind of looks at you a bit funny going, oh, what's that?
Well, I mean, there wasn't really the options, scope-wise, for example. So, it's commonplace now, but 20 years ago, no, it wasn't. So
absolutely.
Okay, cool. So, Rich, I don't actually know we gave you an answer, but I think...
No, we didn't. We just confused him more.
Whether it was one that's helped you or not.
Plenty of answers. Lots of them contradicting. Go with whatever works, mate. If it works for you, then great. It's probably sensible to run everything on your atmospherics in the same thing. I'll say that. Don't sort of mix up your HPA with Fahrenheit with sort of all sorts of stuff. So I think keep it all within that. That way you can set your Kestrel on one thing and away you go. But I think in terms of the end of it, it's no big deal. So if you're listening, you got a different view on it, let us know. Let us know why you've chosen one way or the other, or if you're fully metric or fully imperial. That would be interesting to know the reasons you've gone down that path, because I think we've effectively alluded to the fact we all just fell into what we do now. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Nice. Cool, guys. Well, we may leave that there. If you want to name a stage, stay tuned to Facebook or Instagram for the post about naming a stage. If you want to take me up on the six-pack... I get it now. Six-pack challenge. I didn't even think of that. I mean, I totally thought of that. That's the reason I chose six-packs. I chose six-packs because I couldn't afford cartons. But the six-pack challenge, and you're going to be at the PRS, and you're willing to bet a six-pack of beer, let us know. I'm going to the gym after this, and we will see how that all ends up. There was probably some other news, bits and pieces. Massive thanks to our Patreon supporters for, we haven't sorted chairs out yet, but for starting to upgrade some of our audio equipment. Hopefully that comes through in the near future. And that's about it. Thanks, guys, for coming in.
No worries.
Cheers, Rusty.
Congratulations on the baby, Andrew.
Shut up.
Thanks for listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast. To continue the discussion, check out our Facebook page. And for more information, head to our website, www.precisionshootingpodcast.com.au. This episode was brought to you by Impact Dynamics, advanced training for the precision shooter.